Hello everyone, it's Bessie from The Self-Led Artist, and I'm here for another video as part of the deep dive series into the internal and external conditions of the framework that I'm building to support artists in lots of different mediums have a healthy, sustainable, aligned life. When these conditions are topped up like a little Sims character, using some of the daily anchors and the tools that I'm sharing and advising artists to use, you will improve your quality of life as a creative person, as an artist. You will have more structure, you will have more clarity and more empowerment. And that's why this framework's being built, is to support artists and creative thinkers and creative those that live self-authored creative lives to live lives that they're in control of and that feel sustainable. So yeah, this is what the deep dive series is about. We're on condition 3 of the external, what I call the CRADS conditions. So CRADS, the internal conditions, it stands for C for creative identity, R for regulation, A for artistry, D for direction, and S for sustainability. And then the external conditions of this framework is C for community, R for resources, A for access, which is what we're looking at today, D for domain, another word for this is environment, the environment that you live in, and S is for structure. What kind of structures do you have in your life, i.e. financial spreadsheets and things like that? How well is that topped up? So we have to really be cautious and careful to ensure that all of these conditions are looked at regularly. And if we follow the self-led practice, which lives within these conditions, we will improve the quality of our life. Okay, so let's do a little deep dive on what access actually is. As you can see in the visual that I've got here in front of us, let's take a look at it. You've got access in the middle, connected possibility, and a reachable future. You've then got the options and opportunities of how access strengthens at the bottom. Things like relational proximity, meaningful visibility, system navigation, reducing self-exclusion, building your own ecosystems, and expanding environmental reach. There are other ones as well, like in terms of strengthening access, and that is proactively searching and looking for the access pathways, things like funding, and kind of doing that kind of self-authored first step of reaching out and contacting possible networks and access, right? So weak access, this is what it looks like when you don't have those access pathways. You may have blocked pathways, you may feel isolated, you may be doing a lot of invisible work. There may be gatekeeping within the access that you're looking for. There may be some financial or geographic barriers, like location-wise. And the internal experience when your access pillar is not topped up, you may feel locked out, you may feel hopeless, you may feel some shame or imposter syndrome. And the consequences of that is that your experience and your creative life will feel stagnant. There'll be an identity collapse, there'll be reduced experimentation and survival thinking. On the other side, if you've got strong access, you've got pathways to opportunity, you do have creative ecosystems, you've got mentors and collaborators, you've got industry literacy, supportive environments, and you'll feel hopeful. There'll be motivation, self-belief, inclusion, because of those parts of your access pillar being topped up, and you'll experience momentum, expansion, continuity, and a sustainable creative life. So this is a really important pillar in terms of having a successful, sustainable creative life. So the clearest core definition of access within the external CRADS framework would be this. Access is the degree to which an artist can realistically reach, enter, and participate in the environments, opportunities, systems, and pathways required for their creative life to grow and continue sustainably over time. A more distilled version is access is the presence of reachable pathways between creativity and possibility. So at its deepest level, access determines whether creative possibility feels psychologically reachable or structurally blocked. Because in this context, access includes access to creative ecosystems, access to collaborators, access to information, mentorship, education, physical spaces, visibility, audiences, supportive environments, industry, literacy, access to sustainable pathways, and access to participation itself. It's a lot broader than just getting opportunities or being seen or networking. So the major distinction emerging in the framework is artists often collapse because they cannot find navigatable or reachable pathways for that talent to meaningfully move through reality. So access is fundamentally about connected possibility. And psychologically, access is incredibly important because when pathways disappear, people stop investing emotionally in their future. And that's why weak access as a pillar eventually will affect motivation, identity, hope, ambition, continuity, nervous system regulation, and creative self-belief. So the deepest definition may actually be access is the condition that determines whether an artist feels connected to a reachable future or not. So if community determines whether the artist feels relationally reinforced, and resources determine whether creative life can materially continue, access determines whether the artist can meaningfully reach the spaces, opportunities, systems, environments, and pathways required for their creative life to expand. Creativity won't develop in a vacuum, and talent alone will not guarantee you visibility or opportunity or mobility or participation or reach or advancement. So a lot of artists, they're lacking pathways. It's not a case of lacking originality or depth or intelligence. They're lacking pathways and access. So on a slightly deeper layer and level, access is the degree to which a creative person can realistically enter, navigate, and participate within the environments required for their creative life to grow sustainably. So it's the presence of, excuse me, it's the presence of real pathways into opportunity, participation, visibility, development, collaboration, and creative expansion. So at the deepest level, it answers, can I access the environments that my work needs? Do I know how to move through creative systems? Do I have proximity to opportunities? Can I reach the rooms that my creativity belongs inside? Are there structural barriers limiting my participation? Do I feel locked out of creative progression? Is my creativity isolated from pathways that allow it to evolve? So the important distinction is access is the existence of navigatable pathways between creativity and possibility. Access is not guaranteed success, privilege without effort, instant visibility, or social climbing. It's about pathways between your creativity and possibility. So a useful way to understand it, access is the difference between I have talent and my talent can actually reach environments where it's got room to develop, connect, and continue. So why is it pillar 3, condition 3 of the external CRADS framework? Because creativity becomes psychologically painful when there is no perceived pathway forward. Without access, artists will stagnate, their opportunities will narrow, identity will weaken, their momentum will slow down, hope will decrease, isolation increases, visibility becomes distorted, and sustainability will become harder to manage. A lot of artists, they internalize rejection, they internalize invisibility, exclusion, lack of progression. They internalize all these things as evidence of inadequacy or failure or a lack of legitimacy, when often they just simply lack structural access. So this is quite an important distinction emerging through the Creative Life Archive. A huge amount of artist suffering is around lack of pathways, lack of exposure, a lack of industry literacy. It's not a lack of capability or talent. It's just about this lack of access, things like lack of accessible ecosystems, gatekeeping, financial barriers, social exclusion, geographic isolation. These are the things that need to be strengthened within an artist or creative's life in order to build something sustainable over time. So when the access pillar is weak, this is one of the least discussed forms of creative instability. Modern creative culture often pretends that the best work will naturally rise, but structurally that's rarely true. When the access pillar is weak, internally as an artist or a creative thinker, you'll be thinking, I don't know how to move forward. I'm feeling locked out. I feel invisible. I feel disconnected from opportunity. I feel creatively trapped. I feel like everyone else knows something that I don't. I feel far away from the rooms that I want to be inside. And you may experience a creative withdrawal, maybe a hesitation around sharing work or a reduced ambition, some self-isolation, maybe you stay overly localized, and you give up before fully trying. You may feel this hopelessness or resentment or comparison spirals coming up for you. So the structural consequence when access is weak is that creative possibility begins to shrink psychologically. So that will lead to a reduced momentum, a loss of belief, identity destabilization. You'll have this survival-based thinking come back, because human beings, they need possibility, they need movement, they need expansion, participation, and reachable futures. So without visible pathways, the nervous system eventually stops investing energy into expansion altogether. In comparison, when access as a pillar is strong, this connected possibility, the internal experience will be, there are pathways available to me. I'm feeling connected to possibility. I feel included in creative ecosystems. There's this increased belief in long-term progression. I feel less isolated from opportunity. There's this increased initiative, consistent sharing, greater participation. There's more collaboration, higher creative ambition, strategic movement towards opportunity, and you may be feeling more hopeful, more motivated, more open. Self-belief increases. All of this increases the sustainability of your creative life. So when your access is strong, creative life will feel expandable. Your artist brain and your creative thinking brain will be able to imagine movement. You'll be able to see pathways, participate meaningfully, connect to wider ecosystems, and sustain long-term possibility psychologically. So the core function of access, more than any other pillar within the framework, is that it keeps possibility psychologically alive. With access, movement towards your artistic goals becomes possible, momentum increases, your vision expands, continuity strengthens. And without access, your creativity will contract, your ambition will narrow, your identity will weaken, and your isolation will increase. So why do so many artists struggle with access? Because modern creative systems are often economically exclusionary, they are geographically concentrated in bigger cities, they are normally socially gatekept, they're algorithmically distorted, psychologically opaque, and structurally unequal. So many artists simultaneously lack mentorship, industry literacy, financial mobility. They lack insider networks, they lack creative infrastructure, they definitely lack educational guidance and relational proximity and confidence navigating systems, which creates this really hard and devastating internal narrative. Maybe I'm simply not good enough, when often the artist has simply never been given a clear pathway. So how do we strengthen access? It's not about becoming famous, it's about increasing connected participation with creative possibility. So a few things you can do to strengthen your access pillar pretty quickly. Start looking to build relational proximity. Creative communities, collaborators, mentors, peers, aligned ecosystems, and recurring environments look to build within that space. Increase your visibility intentionally. That's meaningful visibility, sustainable sharing, strategic presence, authentic participation. Learn some system navigation too. Understand industries, understand pathways, understand opportunities, and develop some literacy around creative systems. Reduce self-exclusion. A lot of artists will hide, delay, or hesitate, or assume rejection before participation. So strengthening access often requires allowing yourself to enter the room psychologically first. Create your own ecosystems as well, very important. Some self-built communities, that's what I'm doing with the self-led artist. Independent platforms, collaborative spaces, events, alternative infrastructures. You can create your own ecosystems. Don't need to wait for permission to do that. You can do that yourself. Especially hosting collaborative spaces and events is a beautiful way to do it. Expand your environmental reach as well. Move towards opportunity. Attend spaces. Increase your exposure. Enter conversations. And widen your participation gradually. A lot of artists feel as though they are failing creatively when actually they're just structurally disconnected from opportunity pathways. The issue here is that there is insufficient access to environments capable of recognizing, supporting, or expanding the work. And one of the strongest emerging findings across the Creative Life archive so far is that creative people often collapse psychologically when possibility itself begins to disappear, because pathways will feel blocked, movement will be inaccessible, systems feel impossible to enter, and expansion feels unreachable, which will slowly erode hope, continuity, and momentum, and self-belief, effectively. So if this pillar stabilizes, possibility will expand, and continuity will strengthen, ambition becomes safer, participation increases, creativity deepens, long-term vision feels more real. And if this pillar is unstable, stagnation will compound, isolation will increase, hope will weaken, visibility will narrow, momentum collapses, and identity contracts. So at the deepest level, access determines whether the artist feels connected to a reachable future. And the entire self-led practice is recognizing that sustainable creative life is built through, partially at least, pathways, participation, opportunity, visibility, ecosystem access, relational proximity, and environments capable of allowing creativity to meaningfully move through the world over time. So the next deep dive that I'll be doing will be on D for domain, which is around environment, which will be a really interesting one to dive into. But this one, you can really see how important this is for creating the opportunity necessary to increase momentum. And community is closely linked to this. It's not the same thing. Community are relational mirrors and support, but access is actual pathways that increase your visibility and allow your work professionally or otherwise to gain momentum and traction. So I hope this was useful. I'll be finishing up the series fairly soon in the next couple of weeks, just finishing with D for domain and S for structure. And then we're going to get into deeper parts of the usable framework, things like daily anchors, how to use them. And this is all of this research I'm doing, including the Creative Life Archive interviews, will be, I'm compiling all of this, including all of the theories I'm discovering about creative life and the philosophy. But the first book that I will release will be a workbook, step by step, showing you how to use the self-led practice, how to things like exercises and daily anchors, and things that you can do as routines, as practices, as little stamps in the ground that will allow you to see your life so much clearer with so much more clarity and empowerment. You'll feel so much more in control of your life as a creative, as an artist. You'll have that grounding. So that first book as a workbook, over the next few months, I aim to get started on it, and in the meantime, do one-on-one work with artists and continue to do the deep dives into this part of the framework as it develops. But I'm very excited to. There'll be an event as well that I'm hosting at the end of June, locally to start with. But I'm very excited to start working more deeply, initially one-on-one with different artists to support them and hold them in the life that they're building, and then hopefully go on to supporting wider networks of artists as this builds. But yeah, I hope this was useful to you. I'm going to see you in the next video, which will be likely next week. We'll be looking at domain. If you'd like to connect with me on Instagram as well, it's just at the self-led artist _, and you can always leave a comment and drop me a message via YouTube.